I stood there in the terminal, still gripping my suitcase, watching Sienna's private jet disappear into the clouds without me. Name's Noah Reed. That flight was supposed to be the start of our anniversary getaway, something she'd been hyping up for months. At least, that's what I believed. I'd packed my sharpest shirts, even splurged on a new camera lens to capture what I thought would be special moments between us. But instead of a romantic weekend, I got front row seats to her fashion parade. Sienna, laughing with her glossy entourage, heels clicking like they ruled the planet, sunglasses too expensive to pronounce. "This is a girl's trip now," she'd said, tossing me that smug little smirk, the one that always made me feel like the punchline to her private joke. I could have shouted, could have caused a scene, but I didn't. That's not me. I'm not the beg and chase type. Her laughter still rang in my ears as I turned away and marched straight to the first-class counter. The woman behind the desk didn't even flinch when I asked for a seat on the next flight to Barcelona. I had the miles. I had the money. And suddenly I had a fire in my gut telling me I didn't need Sienna's green light to live my own damn life. Within the hour I was nestled into a cushy seat, coffee in hand, ready to take off. I wasn't chasing after her. I was finally walking away. And 10 minutes after her jet disappeared, I knew she'd be getting an email. It was already queued up, sent straight from our shared legal advisor, courtesy of a little automation magic. The subject line? Preliminary separation agreement. I could practically see her jaw drop at 30,000 feet, surrounded by her designer posse, face draining of color as she realized this wasn't just a tantrum. She thought she was in control. Not anymore. By the time we landed in Barcelona, my phone was buzzing nonstop. I didn't even glance at it, just let it rattle in my pocket while I stepped into the warm rush of chaos that was El Prat Airport. Later, I'd see the number, 137 messages. That's how many desperate little texts she fired off while I was sipping wine somewhere over the Atlantic. Pleading, angry, confused, probably all three. But in that moment, I didn't care. I was in Barcelona, and for the first time in a long while, it wasn't about her. It was about me. I grabbed my bag, fixed my jacket, and walked into a city that suddenly felt wide open, full of possibility. The air smelled like fresh bread and second chances. I didn't look back once. Sienna could keep her jet, her entourage, and that condescending little smile. I had something better now, a one-way ticket to freedom. And I didn't need her blessing to take off. As the plane had climbed higher earlier, I'd felt every bit of it, this shift, this surge of clarity. Name's Noah Reed, and for the first time in forever, I wasn't traveling on her schedule or showing up like her decorative husband for some red carpet nonsense. This flight? This was mine. And damn, it felt good. A flight attendant handed me a glass of champagne. I watched the bubbles rise and fade, just like the promises Sienna used to make. We used to be a team, back when we'd stay up late building her tech empire from scratch in a cramped apartment. I thought it was our dream. Somewhere along the way, it became hers alone. And I turned into the guy holding her purse at award shows, flashing the camera a smile while she lit up the stage. "Noah, you're always there for me," she'd say, like it was some kind of reward. I'd nod, play along, fade into the background. But now, gazing out at the endless horizon, I saw it all clearly. I'd vanished in her spotlight. The champagne tasted sharp, almost sour, but I downed it anyway. Then I pulled out the fancy leather journal she'd gifted me last Christmas. Expensive. Impressive. And like so many things with Sienna, pretty on the outside, hollow on the inside. No note. No message. Just a shell. I flipped it open. Blank pages stared up at me like they were daring me to do something real. I hesitated, then put pen to paper. Noah's Barcelona. Not hers. No fancy poetry. Just truth. And that was enough. I leaned back, breathing it in. Barcelona wasn't just a city anymore, it was a turning point. A statement. A new beginning. I wasn't tagging along anymore. I wasn't waiting for a pat on the head or a slice of her attention. I was here to find out who I was without being Sienna Rose's sidekick. The plane gave a soft tremble, and I found myself making plans. Once I landed, I'd check into a small hotel, nothing showy, nothing curated. I'd walk. No schedule. No handlers. No flashing cameras. I'd just breathe. Eat whatever caught my nose. Maybe take a few photos for myself, not for her Instagram feed. And that thought? It made me grin. A real grin. Not the practiced one I'd worn for too long. I looked down at the journal, traced those first words again. Noah's Barcelona. Freedom never looked so good. I didn't know exactly what I'd find, maybe just a coffee shop where I could think, maybe a quiet alleyway with good light for photos. Maybe even someone who saw me, not the echo of her fame. The idea of not being alone forever danced in the back of my mind, but I shoved it aside. This trip wasn't about replacing her. It was about recovering myself. The flight attendant came back with a warm towel. I took it, wiped my hands like I could scrub away the last 10 years of playing backup. Outside, the sky burned with streaks of pink and gold as the sun dipped below the horizon. I didn't check my phone. Didn't need to. Let her sit with the silence. Let her wonder where I'd gone. For once, I wasn't the one left behind. I tucked the journal into my bag and polished off the last of the champagne. The jet leveled out, slicing through the sky toward a city I'd always loved, but never on my own terms. I didn't need her jet, her plans, or her permission. Barcelona was calling, and this time I was finally listening. And little did I know, what started as an escape would lead to something I never expected. I had a seat, a pen, and a fresh start. Barcelona was right outside those airport doors, and this time I wasn't stepping into it as Sienna's tag-along. I was just Noah. No titles, no labels. Just me. The guy who finally stopped pretending he was fine. My legs were stiff as I stepped off the plane at El Prat Airport, but my mind? It was alive in a way it hadn't been in years. This wasn't some publicity trip Sienna dragged me on, it was a choice. My choice. The terminal buzzed with overlapping voices, French, English, maybe a dozen other languages melting into the air. I moved through it like a man slowly waking up after years of sleepwalking. Pulled my bag from the carousel, tossed it over my shoulder, and was just about to hit the exit when a familiar voice called out. Noah Reed. As I live and breathe. I turned and nearly laughed. Leaning against a pillar with that signature smirk of his was Damien Cross, sharp suit, sharper eyes. One of Sienna's early investors and one of the few people who'd ever stood up to her. He'd bailed on her company a couple years ago, creative differences, I remember him saying. What he meant was she didn't like being told no. Since then, he'd become her biggest competition in tech. Damien, I said, shaking his hand. What brings you here? He gave a short laugh, adjusting his cufflink. Same reason as you, I imagine. Escaping her shadow. Then he added with a grin, heard about what went down at the airport. Classy move. I let out a low chuckle. No clue how he knew so fast, but Damien always had a way of knowing everything 5 minutes before it happened. Yeah, well? I wasn't about to beg. He gave me a look like he respected that. Good. You're not the first she tried to cut out, you know. She uninvited me from her big summit this weekend. He paused, reached into his coat pocket, and handed me an envelope. I plan on crashing it anyway. You should too. I turned the thick card over in my hand. It was an invite to a high-profile tech summit right here in Barcelona. The kind of event where billionaires sip espresso and pretend to listen to each other's speeches. Sienna had been practicing her keynote for weeks, pacing around our living room while I just nodded and played the part of the supportive spouse. She doesn't know you're going, does she? Damien asked, a mischievous glint in his eye. No, I said, the corners of my mouth lifting. But she will. He laughed and clapped me on the back. Now that's what I like to hear. Come on, let's get a drink. You look like you could use one. A few minutes later, we were in a sleek bar just outside the airport. Low lighting, glass walls, and the kind of hush that made you feel like a conversation actually mattered. We ordered a couple of whiskeys. First sip burned like hell, but it brought me right into the present, right into this new version of my life where I wasn't just reacting to her. I was finally doing something for me. Damien leaned back, swirling his drink. So what's next, Noah? She's probably up there freaking out. What's your next move? I stared at the envelope again, still in my hand. I don't really know yet. I just needed to get away, clear my head. But this, I tapped the invite with my finger. This feels like a door opening. He nodded, eyes thoughtful. You know, a lot of what she built, those early marketing campaigns, the original voice of her brand came from you. I remember. I was there. I blinked, a little surprised he brought that up. That was a long time ago. Doesn't make it less true, he said, taking another sip. She's always been good at stealing the spotlight. And you've always been good at letting her. That one hit harder than I expected. I'd told myself for years it didn't matter, that being the guy behind the curtain was enough. But sitting across from Damien, whiskey warming my chest, I saw it for what it was. I'd let myself disappear. But not anymore. This trip? It wasn't just a break. It was a turning point. We drained our glasses and Damien stood, tossing a few bills on the table. See you at the summit, Noah. Don't let her off the hook. He walked away, leaving me with the invitation and a head full of possibilities. I slipped the card into my jacket, paid my share, and stepped out into the night. The Barcelona air was crisp, cool, and alive. The whole city stretched out in front of me like a blank page. I didn't know exactly what I'd do when I showed up at that summit. But one thing was certain, Sienna was about to realize I wasn't a ghost in her rearview anymore. I flagged down a cab, gave the name of a hotel I'd found online, modest, personal, nothing like the marble palaces she preferred, and watched the glow of Barcelona blur past the windows. This was my chance, and I wasn't going to waste it. Next morning, I woke to the gentle hum of the city drifting in through the window. Barcelona was alive, and I was right in the middle of it, far from Siena's perfectly curated universe. Name's Noah Reed, and I was checked into Casa de Alba, a small boutique hotel tucked away in Gracia district. No gold-plated elevators or staff trained to grovel. Just creaky wood floors, sunlight pouring through thin curtains, and a view of winding cobblestone streets. It wasn't glamorous. It was real. And it felt like mine. I pulled on a jacket, slung my camera over my shoulder, and stepped outside. The air hit me like a fresh page being turned. The streets were narrow, lined with charming old buildings and balconies overflowing with flowers. I walked without a map, without a plan, something I hadn't done in years. When I was with Siena, every trip had an agenda. Meetings, events, staged smiles for the cameras. But now? I was just some guy with a camera in a city that didn't care who I was married to. I wandered until I stumbled across a little cafe. Wobbly tables, chipped mugs, and a waiter who didn't hover or rush. I sat down and ordered coffee, letting the simplicity of it all settle into my bones. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't performing. And as I watched the city wake up around me, I couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was waiting just around the corner. The coffee was bold, the croissant still warm and perfectly crisp, and I sat there on that little cafe patio watching Barcelona unfold in front of me, sketch artists capturing passing moments. Old men reading newspapers like they had all the time in the world, kids laughing as they chased pigeons down the street. No one asked about Siena. No one cared about product launches or press events. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't expected to smile for a camera or play the part. I was just sitting, breathing, existing. And slowly, I felt the tension in my shoulders start to melt away. After breakfast, I made my way toward the art district, camera swinging at my side like an old friend I hadn't seen in years. Photography used to be my escape before Siena turned it into some kind of inside joke. "It's a cute hobby, Noah," she'd say, like I was some teenager messing around with toys instead of a grown man who loved capturing life through a lens. Eventually, I stopped bringing it up. Only time I ever carried the camera was when she needed a new artsy shot for her social media, something of her heels, maybe a rooftop brunch. But here in Barcelona, none of that mattered. I lifted the camera to my eye and started shooting at chipped bricks, shadowed alleyways, a woman selling tulips from a rickety cart. The city looked sharper through the lens, like I could finally grab onto something real instead of watching it pass me by. A couple of locals noticed, an older man with a beret and a woman whose scarf danced in the breeze. "Photographer?" the man asked, his English slightly broken but welcoming. "Just for fun," I told him, lowering the camera. "Beautiful city," I added, and he smiled like I'd complimented his own child. We started chatting about cameras, favorite shots, colors, and light. Not once did anyone mention Siena Row or ask if I was with someone famous. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. That evening, I followed a flyer I'd spotted earlier, pinned outside a bakery, some rooftop art show happening nearby. It wasn't fancy. Just string lights overhead, strangers milling around with glasses of cheap red wine, cigarette smoke curling into the night air. The space buzzed with life, with stories told in brushstrokes and twisted wires. And that's where I met her, Isla Bennett. She stood next to her installation, a chaotic web of screens and wires flashing fragmented images that blinked in and out like half-formed memories. Her dark hair was piled in a loose bun, paint streaked across one cheek like she'd forgotten it was even there. But her eyes, they locked on like she could read you front to back in a glance. "What do you think?" she asked, motioning toward the mess of digital chaos. "It's like it's breaking apart and rebuilding itself at the same time," I said, not really sure if that was deep or just clumsy. Her smile was slow, a little crooked, like I'd passed some kind of unspoken test. "Exactly. Erasure and rebirth." We talked for a while, her voice calm but deliberate. She told me the piece was about shedding everything you pretended to be just to find what's been buried underneath all along. Sometimes, she said, you have to disappear to finally be seen. That hit me right in the chest. I didn't even know how to respond. I told her about the camera, how I'd picked it up again that morning after years of letting it collect dust. She nodded, understanding more than I was saying. "You should come back tomorrow," she said. "There's a workshop. Bring your shots." I left the rooftop buzzing, her words swirling in my head. Gracia district felt different now, like every crooked stair and lamplit alley was helping me shake off who I used to be. I didn't need Siena's spotlight or her jet or her approval. I had a camera. a half-folded paper map, and an artist's invitation to keep going. Back at Casa de Alba, I slipped into the quiet of my little room, heart still pounding from the rooftop conversation and the pull of something new. I dropped my jacket over the chair, kicked off my shoes, and collapsed on the bed, staring at the ceiling like it might answer the questions buzzing in my brain. My phone sat untouched on the nightstand, screen dark and silent. I hadn't powered it on since the airport, didn't want the noise, the control, the drama. But now something tugged at me. Curiosity, maybe? Or just that nagging itch to see how hard Sienna was spiraling. I picked it up and held the button. The screen lit up, buzzed, and there they were, 137 messages. A digital avalanche, all from her. I didn't open any of them at first. Just watched the previews scroll past like a slow-motion train wreck. The first batch? Classic Sienna. Snarky, smug. Still at the airport? You're being dramatic. I could practically hear the clink of champagne glasses as she typed those, probably mid-flight, thinking I'd cave before her jet even touched down. But somewhere around message 20, the tone shifted. Where are you? Noah, answer me. By the time I hit number 45, she was angry. What the hell did you do? That must have been when the separation email landed in her inbox, our legal advisor's polite little nuke. I grinned, picturing her perfectly manicured fingers stabbing at her phone, trying to regain control. But the messages kept coming and her confidence started crumbling. You can't do this to me, she wrote at 96. Like I was the one who'd walked away laughing. Then the messages softened. Got desperate. Noah, I need to talk to you. Please. I'm sorry. That one, number 124, almost made me laugh. Sienna didn't say sorry. Not unless the walls were closing in. Message 137 was the kicker. We need to fix this. No threats. No ego. Just fear. Just panic. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the reply button. But I didn't touch it. What could I say? She'd left me standing there without a second thought. Laughed about it. Expected me to crawl back. Not this time. I hit the power button. The screen went black again. Let her stew. Let her wonder. I wasn't her safety net anymore. I wasn't her fixer, her follower, her fallback. I walked to the window and opened it wide, the night air washing over me, cool and alive. And that's when I realized this story was just starting. Barcelona shimmered below my window, all soft lights and quiet rhythm, and for the first time in a long while, I felt something settle deep inside me. Maybe it was peace. Maybe it was power. Whatever it was, it felt like mine. Sienna could blow up my phone with 1,000 messages, it wouldn't change a damn thing. I was here, living, while she was spinning in her high-altitude bubble of denial. I reached for my camera on the table and started flipping through the shots I'd taken that day, flowers spilling from a cart, an old cracked stone wall, that man in the beret smiling like he knew a secret. They weren't perfect, but they were mine. Raw. Honest. And they meant more than any polished Instagram shot I ever took for her. My thoughts drifted back to Isla's words from the rooftop, erasure and rebirth. Maybe that's what this trip really was. Me letting Sienna's barrage of texts drown the version of myself I'd let her mold. I didn't owe her an explanation. And I sure as hell didn't owe her my time. She'd figure it out soon enough. I slid under the covers, the sheets cool against my skin, and shut my eyes. The phone stayed dark. The messages stayed unread. And for the first time in years, I fell asleep without her voice echoing in my head. Just the sound of Barcelona breathing outside, whispering promises of tomorrow. Morning light poured in through the curtains like a gentle brushstroke across the room at Casa de Alba. Soft, golden, dreamlike. My name's Noah Reed, and I woke up not to Sienna yelling over phone calls or barking orders, but to silence. To peace. And the beautiful fact that the day ahead was mine to shape. I stretched, my legs sore from wandering the cobblestones, but it was a good kind of sore. Today was Isla's workshop, and I felt something stirring inside me, like I was about to open a door I'd been afraid to knock on. I showered quickly, threw on a soft sweater and a pair of jeans, grabbed my camera and slipped a few photos I'd printed from a corner shop into my bag. The walk from Gracia District to Pobl SEC was long, but I didn't mind it. This city was speaking to me with every turn. I stopped for a pain au chocolate from a street vendor and ate it while walking, buttery flakes tumbling down my jacket. Barcelona didn't rush you, it invited you to notice things. And for once I was paying attention. By the time I found the workshop tucked above a quiet bookstore, it already felt like I'd lived a day's worth of meaning. Inside, Isla was arranging cables and setting up a projector, her movement smooth and sure. You made it, she said with a quick glance and that half-smile again. Brought your soul to shred? I laughed, holding up my camera. Something like that. She waved me in and I joined a small group of artists, paint-streaked hands, quiet eyes, people who knew what it meant to pull something out of yourself and hold it up to the light. Isla explained the goal. We weren't just creating digital self-portraits, we were breaking ourselves down to the bones and rebuilding from the pieces that mattered. We're not posting for approval, she said. We're deconstructing. We're revealing what's left when the masks come off. I wasn't sure I fully understood it, but I knew I needed it. She handed me a tablet linked to a screen and showed me how to start. Upload a photo. Dismantle it pixel by pixel. I scrolled through my shots, hesitating for a moment, then landed on one I'd buried months ago. It was from a gala, Sienna in a sparkling dress, all camera angles and poise. I was half cropped out, stuck in the edge of the frame, smiling like I'd just been told to behave. She'd captioned it something cheesy about power couples, but I'd always hated that photo. I uploaded it. The image popped onto the projector, large, unavoidable. Isla leaned over. That one says a lot. What do you want to do with it? I didn't even think. Get rid of her. She grinned and handed me a stylus, showing me how to erase. Bit by bit, Sienna vanished from the frame, her dress, her eyes, that smirk. Gone. Then I looked at what was left, just me, off-center, awkward. But I didn't stop there. I stripped away the background too. The fake lighting. The forced smile. I broke it all down until it looked like static. Then, slowly, I built something new. I centered myself, filled the empty space with street scenes from Barcelona, the cobblestones, the warmth of dusk, the texture of truth. No red carpet. No spotlight. Just me. Finally whole. Isla was watching. That's you, she said softly. Not the version you were selling. I looked at the screen, at this new image, and nodded. Yeah, I think it is. We kept going for hours, everyone lost in their own unraveling. I dug deeper, pulled out old shots from vacations, events, moments I'd forgotten, me holding her purse on a beach, taking pictures of her meals while mine went cold. All of it got shredded and reborn. When I saved the last piece, Isla came over and looked me in the eye. You just created your first honest work, she said. Feels different, right? I nodded, barely able to speak. She was right. It didn't just feel good, it felt like I'd clawed something back from the grave. The sun was setting when I left the studio, tablet tucked under my arm, a dozen pieces of my real self stored inside. Barcelona lit up like it had been waiting for me this whole time. Sienna's world didn't have a hold on me anymore. I wasn't part of her production. I was building something new and it was real. That night, I stepped out of a cab into the cool Barcelona air. The venue lights for the summit dinner glowed ahead like a spotlight aimed at a different kind of stage. My name's Noah Reed, and tonight wasn't about hiding in the background. It was about stepping into the room like I finally belonged there. And little did I know someone else was about to notice. That invitation was still tucked in my pocket, creased from being handled all day, but it felt like more than just a dinner pass. It felt like a line in the sand. I straightened my jacket. Nothing flashy. Nothing designer. Just something I liked. And walked inside. The place was everything you'd expect from a tech elite event. Polished glass, polished people, polished lies. Suits that probably cost more than the car I used to drive. I scanned the room, half expecting Sienna to glide in with that queen of the universe grin plastered on her face. But she wasn't there. Yet, her name was still printed on the table cards. Sienna Rowe, keynote speaker. Looked like she hadn't officially backed out. Probably still deciding if she could spin this. I spotted Damien near the bar, nursing a drink and chatting with a guy in a ridiculous bow tie. When he caught sight of me, he lit up and waved me over. You clean up nice, Noah, he said, handing me a glass of something dark that smelled like it had history. You ready to rattle the cage? I took a sip, letting it burn its way down. She's not here, is she? He shook his head, eyes gleaming. Not yet. Word is she's gone dark since the legal bomb dropped. Her team's been scrambling all day. I didn't even have time to ask more before someone grabbed my arm. Ivy Carson, Sienna's assistant. She looked flustered, her usually perfect bun slipping loose. Noah, she hissed under her breath, pulling me aside. Thank God you're here. I raised an eyebrow. Why? So someone can keep the ship from sinking? She's been spiraling since that legal thing hit. Ivy whispered, eyes darting. She hasn't told anyone why she's skipping the dinner. That's her problem, I said calmly. Not mine. Ivy blinked like she hadn't expected me to be so detached. You're not worried? I smiled, just enough to throw her off. Let her tell whatever story she wants. I'm finally telling mine. She stared at me a moment longer, then nodded slowly and stepped back as the crowd began to move toward the dining area. Damien made sure I had a prime seat, no corner table for me tonight. I sat down, the room buzzing around me. Voices, laughter, silverware clinking against glass. The keynote was set to start, and some fill-in guy nervously shuffled his notes on stage. But then the MC stepped up to the mic instead. "Before we begin," he said, voice echoing through the room, "I think we should recognize someone who's been behind the scenes far too long." I felt the shift in the room before I even heard my name. "Noah Reed," he said, "the mind behind the original branding concept that helped launch Sienna Rose Empire." Silence. And then all eyes turned to me. I froze, glass halfway to my lips. Damien leaned in with a grin. "Told you I'd stir the pot." A few seconds passed like an eternity. Then someone clapped. Just one person at first, then a ripple, then the whole room. Applause. Real, honest, loud applause. I stood up, nodded, unsure what else to do. The MC kept talking, rambling about innovation, about overlooked contributors. I barely heard any of it. My heart wasn't pounding from nerves. It was pounding from something else entirely: relief, recognition, vindication. For years, I told myself the credit didn't matter, that the brand thriving was enough. But standing there in that moment, I knew it did matter. It always had. The dinner continued, but I floated through it. Plates clinked, conversations buzzed, and people started coming over, wanting to know about the early days, the ideas, the vision that got buried. "You're the real deal," one guy said, a tech blogger I vaguely recognized. "She never mentioned you." "She didn't have to," I replied with a shrug. "I was there anyway." Damien caught up with me as the night wound down. "You handled that like a pro," he said, his tone half teasing. "She's going to hate this." "Good," I said without hesitation. "Let her." We stepped outside, the Barcelona night brushing cool against my skin. I didn't need her there to feel the weight of what had just happened. The applause still echoed somewhere in my chest. Not just for the role I played back then, but for what I was doing now. Standing up, stepping forward. Ivy's voice lingered in my head, though, spiraling. Part of me couldn't help but wonder. Where was Sienna right now? Pacing some gilded hotel suite, throwing her phone, trying to spin this into her next headline? But I didn't dwell on it. That night wasn't hers. It was mine. I walked the city the next evening, strolling along the coastline, where the river caught the light like shattered gold. Barcelona glowed, and so did something inside me. My name's Noah Reed, and I was still high off that summit dinner. The looks people gave me, the gasps, the applause, felt like finally being seen. But even as the buzz lingered, something else started to creep in. Quiet ache. A little itch in the back of my mind I couldn't quite scratch. That morning she'd texted again. Just one line. "Let's meet. No press. Just us." I'd read it over coffee, the steam curling up from the mug like a ghost. And even though I knew better, I typed out a reply. "Fine. Café Solara. 6:30 p.m. Now here I was, walking toward the cafe with a chest full of thoughts and no real plan. I didn't know what I wanted out of this. Closure? Clarity? One last chapter? The place was quiet, tucked just off a narrow side street, little tables scattered across the cobblestones. I got there early, ordered a glass of red, and sat outside where I could see the river flow. 10 minutes past 7, I heard the click of heels, sharp, controlled, familiar. She arrived like she always did, just a little late, just enough to stay in control. Big sunglasses even though the sun was long gone. Face unreadable. Movements calculated. She sat down without a word, set her purse beside her, and stared at me across the small table. "You embarrass me," she said. No greeting. No softness. Just those 4 words, stiff and bitter. I took a slow sip of wine, let the silence stretch between us, and then set the glass down. "No," I said calmly. "You did that to yourself." "I just stopped covering for you," I said. She yanked off her sunglasses, and for a second I saw it, those sharp, calculating eyes, but with a hint of exhaustion behind them. Like even she was tired of the act. "That email, Noah. The summit. What the hell are you doing? Trying to destroy me?" I leaned back in my chair, kept my tone calm even though my chest was tight. "I'm not out to ruin you," I said. "I'm just done playing along." That's it. I paused, remembering it all too clearly, her leaving me stranded at the airport like I was some afterthought. And the worst part? She laughed about it like it was nothing. Did you really think I'd just let that slide? There was a flicker in her expression, barely there, but I caught it. A flinch. It was a mistake, she said, her voice a little softer now. I got caught up with the girls. The trip, it wasn't supposed to go down like that. But it did, I replied. And it's always like that, isn't it? Me sitting on the sidelines waiting. You making the calls. I looked her dead in the eye. I'm not your backup plan anymore, Sienna. She stared, fingers tapping against the table in that jittery way she hated admitting she did. That little tick she always tried to hide. So that's it? You're just walking away? After everything we built together? No, I said, leaning in slightly. You built it. I just held things up when you needed support. Threw in some ideas here and there. But you took the spotlight, the power, and left me in the shadows. I shrugged. I'm not asking for praise. I'm just done lying to myself like that was ever enough. Her jaw tightened. She didn't say anything back, and maybe she didn't have it in her to argue this time. All right, she muttered, voice cooling fast. That switch, she always flipped it when she realized she was losing ground. Let's talk settlements. We can keep it civil. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a card, Vanessa's. My lawyer. Slid it across the table, slow and deliberate. Everything goes through her now. Then I stood. We're done here. But as I walked away, a thought lingered. Was she really letting go that easy? Or was this just the calm before she made her next move? She glanced down at the card, then back at me. Her mouth parted like she was about to argue, ready to pull me into one last round of the same old game, but I was already on my feet. Noah, wait, she called after me. But I didn't. I left her there, frozen at that cafe table, the untouched glass of wine catching the afternoon light, and my lawyer's card lying between us like a line she couldn't cross anymore. As I walked away, slow at first, then picking up pace, I felt it. Not just the moment shifting, but something inside me. Something final. The balance had tipped, and for the first time in years, it landed in my favor. I didn't owe her my time. I didn't owe her answers. She'd had years of me twisting myself into something smaller, something easier, just to keep the peace. That version of me? He was done. The coastline glinted beside me as I crossed the street, the water moving steady and calm, and I swear I could feel my chest loosen, breath by breath. This time, the choice wasn't hers. It was mine. And I had made it. Barcelona wrapped around me like an old friend, familiar and comforting, giving me something I hadn't had in a long time, a voice, a backbone, a sense of self I thought I'd lost. She could sit there for hours if she wanted, scheming her next move, trying to reclaim control. But it wouldn't make a damn difference. I was free. Not just from her, but from the role I'd let her cast me in for too long. I matched the rhythm of the river, each step lighter than the last. The next morning, sunlight crept through the blinds in soft slants, warming the corner of my room at Casa de Alba. There was this quiet buzz in my chest, like something good was on its way. My name's Noah Reed. And after walking out of that cafe last night, leaving Sienna behind with nothing but her silence and a stiff glass of wine, I knew I'd finally cut the last thread tying me to her world. I didn't check my phone. I didn't even wonder if she'd messaged. Because for once, today wasn't about her. It was about me. And I had something stirring inside me, a flicker of an idea I couldn't shake. I made myself a coffee from the little kitchenette down the hall. It was bitter, almost harsh, but it hit just right as I stood by the window watching Gracia District yawn into motion. Down on the street, shopkeepers were setting up, delivery bikes weaving past early commuters. My mind wandered to the photos I'd taken, the ones I'd reworked with Isla. They weren't just snapshots anymore. They were something personal. Something that told the truth. What if I shared them? Not for revenge. Not to get under Sienna's skin. Just for me. I pulled out my notebook, the one I kept buried at the bottom of my bag, and started scribbling. Gallery. Show. Barcelona. By the time my cup was empty, I had the bones of a plan. I grabbed my phone and dialed. Hey, it's Noah, I said, pacing the room. You know anything about renting gallery space? Isla laughed, that easy, musical laugh that made you feel like anything was possible. You're serious? She said. Yeah, I know a place near Elborn. Small, but full of character. What are you thinking? An exhibit, I told her, feeling the words settle into place. The portraits from the workshop. The street shots from this week. I want to show them. She didn't skip a beat. I'm in. Meet me there in an hour. I grabbed my camera, stuffed the printed photos into a folder, and headed out. Elborn was this beautiful chaos, narrow alleys, crooked buildings, galleries tucked between wine bars and bakeries. The space she found was perfect. Clean white walls, old wooden floors, and a big window that spilled sunlight across the room like it was meant for my work. The owner, a stocky guy named Marcel, grumbled about flaky artists but agreed to rent it for a few days. Tossed me the keys like it was no big deal. Isla showed up with a toolbox and that familiar grin, and we got to work. We hung the shots, my silhouette lost in Barcelona streets, the fragmented gala photo, the candid of the flower vendor laughing with her whole face. I called it uncropped. It felt right, like I was finally stepping out from behind the lens and into my own picture. We spent the entire day arranging and rearranging until everything clicked into place. And the next afternoon we opened the doors. No hype, no press. Just a handwritten sign out front and a few texts to friends. People came, locals, a handful of tourists, drifting through, lingering, whispering. A woman in a red coat bought the flower cart photo. Said it reminded her of her grandmother. A bearded guy grilled me about the digital editing. It wasn't a crowd, but it was real. 2 days later, every piece was sold. I couldn't stop smiling. That second night, Damien showed up, still sharp as ever, dressed like he belonged on the cover of something expensive. "Congrats," he said, handing me a cold beer from the bar next door. "You're a hit." Then he added, almost as an afterthought, "By the way, she's trying to buy back your shares in the company." I raised an eyebrow. "Seriously?" He smirked. Told her she was too late. I clinked my bottle against his and let out a laugh. "Let her scramble. I'm good right here." He nodded, giving the room a slow once-over. "This is you, Noah. Not her echo." Isla joined us, her jeans streaked with paint and her energy still buzzing. She nudged me with her elbow. "You did it," she said. "Told you there was something honest in those shots." "Couldn't have done it without you," I replied. And I meant every word. She just smiled, but her eyes said she understood. The three of us stood there as the last visitors trickled out, the gallery quiet again. I looked around at the empty walls, the little sold tags still fluttering on the frames. And for the first time in years, I felt full, not just of pride, but of something I hadn't felt in a long time. This wasn't just a win. It was freedom. This gallery? It was my passport to the real me, signed, sealed, and stamped in Barcelona. I didn't need Sienna's validation. Didn't need her empire. I had this. And for once it was enough. But even as I packed my bags that final morning, the sun soft through the curtains, I knew this wasn't the end, just the first step into whatever came next. Because now, I wasn't running from her. I was chasing something of my own. I wasn't sure where I'd go next. Maybe home, maybe somewhere entirely new. But wherever it was, I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't the same man who arrived here. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, the screen lighting up with a single new message. Just one. From her. Sent a little after midnight. "Do you still love me?" There it was. Simple, clean, and cutting like always. That was Sienna's specialty. Knowing exactly where to strike when she felt herself losing grip. I could picture her now, sitting in some sleek hotel room, probably barefoot in silk, nails tapping the screen, waiting for me to break the silence. Waiting for me to fold. My thumb hovered over the reply button. Old habits stirred, tugging at me. Say yes. Keep the peace. Give her a thread to hold on to. But I didn't bite this time. I hit delete. No answer. No punctuation. Just peace. I didn't know her that anymore. I set the phone back down, got dressed, and stepped outside into a city that had become more of a home to me than anything I'd known in a long time. Gracia District was waking up slow and soft. Bakers pulling fresh trays from ovens, school kids laughing as they ran ahead of their parents, and I let myself move through it all without rush. Barcelona had handed me more than just a gallery. It had given me back my footing, reminded me who I was without the weight of someone else's world on my back. Eventually, I wandered into this cozy little bookstore cafe near the coastline. It had mismatched chairs and shelves that practically groaned under the weight of stories. I ordered a coffee, grabbed a plain journal from the rack. No fancy leather, no gilded edges, and sat near the window. Outside, the river caught the morning light just right, and inside, I flipped to the first page and wrote, Noah Reed, artist. Not Sienna's husband. Not the guy stuck in the background. Just me. The words flowed out easily, no hesitation this time. It wasn't some epic tale, not yet. But it was mine, and that was enough. I drank my coffee slow, letting the bitter taste anchor me in the moment, and watched people pass. Tourists, locals, parents balancing strollers and bags of bread. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I thought about everything that had happened that week. Damien smirking at the summit, Isla pushing me at the workshop, those gallery walls slowly emptying with each photo sold. Those people had seen me. Not her echo, not her tag-along, but me. My phone buzzed once. Then again. I didn't check it. Didn't need to. Let her send whatever she wanted, regrets, questions, the same old drama. None of it could undo the choice I'd already made. The foundation I'd already laid. The cafe filled around me, voices rising like a gentle hum. I kept writing photo ideas, places I wanted to visit, details I wanted to catch through my lens. The pages filled fast, each one putting distance between me and the man who once stood silent at an airport, watching her plane disappear into the clouds. I didn't hate her. Funny thing is, I didn't even miss her. She was a closed chapter now. And this journal, this city, this version of me, that was the beginning of something new. I paid my tab, tucked the notebook under my arm, and stepped back outside. The air was crisp, fresh, the kind that clears your head. The coastline rolled beside me, steady as ever. As I walked, I felt that final thread tugging at me, the one tied to her last message, and then I felt it go slack like it had finally snapped free. No, Sienna, I don't still love you. Not in the way you mean. Not in the way that chains me to your story. I love this now. The stillness. The freedom. The man I'm becoming. I stopped on a bridge, leaned against the railing, the cold pressing into my palms, and watched a boat glide past, its wake breaking gently behind it. Barcelona spread out around me, lights flickering on as the sun began to fade. I was flying out tomorrow, but I wasn't leaving empty-handed. I had something better than souvenirs. I had a new story, one I wrote myself. That night, I walked the city like it belonged to me. The streets had thinned, the noise quieted, and every stone underfoot felt like a goodbye. I passed a street musician, an older guy playing a slow, haunting tune on an accordion. I dropped a few coins into his hat, nodded, and kept walking. The melody trailed after me, soft and slow, like a shadow that didn't want to let go. I thought about that journal in my bag. Noah Reed, artist. Still strange, still new, but it fit better than any title she'd ever given me. I let my thoughts drift to her. She was probably back home by now, storming through the house, lashing out at Ivy or barking orders at her lawyer. And that last message, "Do you still love me?" kept echoing, not because I felt anything for it, but because it felt like a ghost. Something that used to haunt me. Now it was just a whisper I'd finally walked past. I turned onto a side street I hadn't noticed before. Narrower, quieter. Old lanterns cast patches of gold across the cobblestones. Then I saw it. A small wooden sign swaying in the breeze. El Respiro. Rest. Couldn't have named it better myself. I pushed open the door, warm air rushing out to meet me like a hug I didn't know I needed. The place was half full, quiet chatter floating under the low ceiling. I ordered a whiskey, no small talk, and took it to a corner table by the window. The glass was heavy in my hand, the amber catching the light like it had a story of its own. I sipped slow, let the burn settle in. At the next table, a guy was sketching something on a napkin, pencil scratching quick and messy. For a moment, I thought about reaching for my camera. But I didn't. Just watched. Just felt it. And then the door creaked open. Isla walked in like it was no big deal. Hair down, scarf loose, that familiar glint in her eye. "Fancy seeing you here," she said, sliding into the seat across from me like she belonged there. And in that moment, I didn't think about the past or what I'd left behind, I just wondered what might happen next. "I figured you'd be halfway packed by now," I said with a grin, setting my glass down gently on the table. "Wanted to say goodbye to Barcelona first." She gave a casual shrug, waving down the bartender and ordering a glass of wine. "I live here," she said, "but this place, it helps me think." For a while, we just sat there in comfortable silence, letting the low murmur of the bar fill in the blanks between us. Then she looked at me steady, focused, just like she had during the workshop. "You've changed," she said. It wasn't a question, more like an observation. "Yeah," I nodded slowly. "I feel it too." She took a slow sip of her drink, then leaned in a little. "That exhibit you called Uncropped, those weren't just photographs, were they? That was you, trying to understand who you really are." Her words hit somewhere deep, and I paused, thinking back to those images. How they helped me pull myself out of the narrow frame Sienna had placed me in. Yeah, I admitted. Took me a while, but I see it now. She gave me this quiet little smile, honest and warm, the kind that says more than words could. Most people never get there, she said. They stay inside the frame. We talked for hours after that about art, about Barcelona, about how life has this strange way of breaking you apart just to show you how to put yourself back together. She told me about her next project, something abstract with sound and light. I told her about the journal I'd started and how I wanted to keep documenting things, no matter where I ended up. The whiskey got low, the crowd thinned out, but we stayed put. There wasn't any flirtation, no hidden agenda, just two people who somehow understood each other. And in all that uncertainty, it felt steady. Like a weight in the best way. Eventually, the bartender called out last rounds, and we stepped outside. The cold bit through my jacket, jolting me awake. She tightened her scarf and looked at me with a soft grin. You'll come back, she said. Barcelona doesn't let go that easy. Maybe, I said, smiling. Or maybe I'll just take a piece of it with me. She laughed at that, gave me a wave, and vanished into the night. I walked the quiet streets alone, the city softer now, my breath curling in the cold air like smoke. Back at the hotel, I packed my bag, slipping the journal in last like it was some kind of promise. I lay down on the bed, eyes on the ceiling. Tomorrow, I'd be gone. But tonight, I was still here. Still Noah. Still flying. And as I closed my eyes, something told me this wasn't the end of the story, just the end of one chapter.